Imagine this. I'm just minding my own business, pulling into my garage to charge my golf cart after a long day on the course, when suddenly, chaos erupts. Out of nowhere, I hear screaming sharp, panicked, the kind that makes your stomach drop. I look up, and there she is, my neighbor, the infamous HOA Karen, pointing at me like I'm a criminal. She's waving her arms and yelling that I just stole her brand new car. I froze. My golf cart was plugged in, perfectly harmless. And yet, here she was, calling 911 like I had committed some grand theft. This isn't just another HOA dispute. This is a full-blown, middle-of-the-afternoon confrontation, right in the quiet suburban streets we all think are safe. I could hear the sirens starting to wail in the distance, and my heart was racing. How did charging a golf cart turn into a situation where I might get arrested? And why was Karen so convinced that my little vehicle was out to ruin her day, or worse, her life? For anyone who's ever had to deal with an over-the-top neighbor, you know how quickly things can escalate. There's tension, there's drama, and sometimes there's just plain confusion. But this was a new level. Karen wasn't just upset, she was determined. I tried to explain, tried to calm the situation, but every word seemed to make her more frantic, more certain that I was some kind of criminal mastermind targeting her shiny new car. And all the while, I'm just standing there, thinking, how did charging a golf cart become a 5-alarm neighborhood incident? As the sirens got closer and my palms started to sweat, I realized this wasn't going to be a quick misunderstanding. The HOA rules, the suburban etiquette, the absurdity of the accusation, it was all colliding in the most dramatic way imaginable. And just when I thought it couldn't get any crazier, the unexpected happened, leaving me completely stunned and unsure of what would happen next. You won't believe what went down when the authorities finally arrived. But first, let me take you back to the moments leading up to the chaos, and why something as simple as charging my golf cart sparked one of the wildest confrontations I've ever had. If you want, can also draft a punchy, clickable continuation line to hook viewers straight into part 2 of your story. Do you want me to do that? Ever since moving into this neighborhood, I'd noticed Karen, let's just call her HOA Karen for now, had a reputation. She was the type of neighbor who scrutinized every lawn, every mailbox, and every car in the driveway. People whispered about her endless complaints to the HOA and how quickly she escalated minor issues into full-blown confrontations. I'd seen her in action before, but nothing prepared me for the level of intensity she brought when she turned her attention to me. That day started completely normal. I had just finished a long round of golf and was ready to plug in my golf cart in my garage, something I'd done hundreds of times without incident. My garage is my little sanctuary, tucked away from prying eyes, or so I thought. But apparently, that afternoon, Karen was watching. She had just purchased a new car, shiny and expensive, parked it near the driveway, and for reasons I still can't fully comprehend, she decided my simple act of charging a golf cart was somehow a direct threat to her vehicle. I remember her yelling from across the driveway, accusing me of theft, her voice trembling between fear and rage. It was surreal. I could see neighbors peeking out from windows, some whispering, some trying to stay out of it. I tried to reason with her, explaining that this was my golf cart and that I wasn't touching her car. But she was already dialing 911, insisting on immediate action. The tension escalated faster than I could process. Every second felt like an eternity as her accusations grew louder and more frantic in the back of my mind. I kept thinking about the HOA rules, the neighborhood gossip, and the delicate balance of living next to someone who seems determined to escalate everything. I'd heard stories about disputes ending in legal battles, fines, and even police involvement, but never imagined I'd be caught in the middle. And yet, here I was, frozen, trying to figure out if this was just a misunderstanding or something far more dramatic. As the sirens got closer, my stomach twisted with anxiety. The neighbors had gathered, watching the scene unfold, and I could feel their eyes on me. The air felt charged with anticipation, like something was about to happen that none of us would forget. And just when I thought I had a moment to catch my breath, Karen did something that completely changed the energy of the confrontation, leaving me questioning what would happen the second the police pulled into the street. If you want, I can continue with the next segment where the police arrive and the tension peaks, keeping viewers hooked. Do you want me to do that? By the time the police arrived, the street had transformed into a small scene from a drama I never signed up for. Flashing lights reflected off the garage walls, neighbors craning their necks to see what was happening. Karen was still pointing at me, her voice high and frantic, repeating over and over that I was stealing her car. Meanwhile, I was trying to stay calm, but inside, my mind was racing. Every instinct told me to stay still, speak clearly, and avoid making the situation worse. The officers stepped out of their car cautiously, glancing at Karen and then at me. I could tell they were trying to figure out what had triggered the call. I explained, as calmly as possible, that I was charging my golf cart and had never touched her car. Karen, however, wasn't backing down. She was shaking, almost trembling, as she insisted that I had been sneaking around, trying to tamper with her vehicle. Her story didn't make much sense, but her intensity made the officers take note. I could see the skepticism in their eyes. Yet the situation was sticky. Karen was a persistent neighbor, and a police report had been filed. What made it worse was the other neighbors, some of whom had their own opinions about Karen. A few whispered to each other, others just watched silently, but their presence added pressure. I could feel the subtle judgments, the sideways glances, and it made every moment stretch longer. In the midst of all this, I noticed something at a neighbor I hadn't really spoken to before was stepping closer, eyes darting between Karen and me, holding their phone like they might record something. Suddenly, it wasn't just about Karen and me. It felt like the entire street had become part of the conflict. Then there was my golf cart, sitting quietly in the garage, completely innocent, but somehow at the center of this storm. I couldn't believe that a simple battery charging could spiral into a full-scale confrontation with police involved. And just when I thought I could catch a break, Karen did something that made the officers pause, leaning even closer to me and whispering something under her breath that I couldn't quite catch, but it was enough to make the tension spike even higher. At that moment, I realized this was far from over. Karen's accusations, the police presence, and the neighborhood's watchful eyes had turned a normal day into a suspense-filled standoff. The real question was, how far would this escalate before anyone stepped in to stop it? Tore before it went completely off the rails. I can continue with the next part where the confrontation deepens and unexpected twists come into play. Do you want me to move forward with that section? The tension in the driveway kept ratcheting higher with every passing second. The officers were caught in the middle, asking questions that seemed to irritate Karen even more, while I tried to explain myself calmly. But the more I spoke, the louder she became, her voice cutting through the air like a siren. She kept repeating the same accusations, each one more dramatic than the last, insisting that I had some hidden plan to steal her car while pretending to charge my golf cart. I could see the doubt in the officers' eyes, but Karen's intensity made them cautious. They couldn't ignore her claims entirely. Meanwhile, the neighbors had formed a semicircle, some whispering to each other, some openly staring. I could feel the weight of their scrutiny, the unspoken judgments, and it made every movement feel heavier. It wasn't just about Karen anymore. It felt like the entire street was holding its breath, waiting to see if this would explode into something bigger. My heart was pounding as I glanced at my golf cart, perfectly still in the garage, a silent witness to the chaos. It was ridiculous, almost comical if it weren't so nerve-wracking, that such a small thing had escalated into this full-blown drama, and then Karen did something unexpected. She stepped closer, pointing directly at me, her finger trembling, and whispered a claim that made the officers stop in their tracks. Whatever she said, it was enough to make the situation feel immediate, urgent, like any wrong move could tip the scales. I felt trapped, trying to defend myself without making her more defensive, trying to show the officers the truth without sounding defensive or suspicious. At that moment, every sound seemed amplified. The faint hum of the golf cart charger, the distant wail of sirens approaching, the murmurs of neighbors, Karen's rapid-fire accusations. I realized that one wrong word, one mistaken gesture, could escalate this further. My palms were slick with sweat, and every instinct screamed at me to stay calm. Yet the anxiety was almost paralyzing, and just as the officers were about to step closer to separate us, a sudden movement from the edge of the crowd caught everyone's attention, something that threatened to make the situation even more volatile. In that instant, it felt like the entire street had been drawn into a single moment of high-stakes suspense, with all eyes